They weren't us. They weren't Neanderthals. And yet, 300,000 years ago, they walked the same forests, drank from the same rivers, and left pieces of themselves inside your body. You're carrying their DNA right now. Their genes are humming inside your cells while you listen to this. And here's the part that should make you sit down. Until a few years ago, science didn't even know they existed. No skull, no skeleton, no fossil, nothing. Just a ghost hiding inside the human genome, waiting for someone to look in the right place. For most of the 20th century, the story of humanity was simple and almost embarrassingly tidy. Modern humans evolved in Africa, walked north, met the Neanderthals in Europe, had a brief and slightly awkward overlap, and then quietly replaced them. 2 characters, 1 stage, clean ending. That's what your textbooks said. That's what museums put behind glass. That's what every documentary repeated for 50 years, with the same dramatic music and the same illustrations of bearded ancestors squinting into the sun. But somewhere around 2010, something began to crack. Geneticists started mapping ancient DNA with a precision no one believed was possible before. They could now read genetic code from a fingertip bone older than the pyramids. They could pull instructions out of dust, and when they pulled them, the dust started talking. And it was saying something very strange. There was a third voice in the story, a third human, not Neanderthal, not Homo sapiens, not anything we had a name for. The first hint came from a cave in southern Siberia called Denisova, a wind-cut crack in the Altai Mountains, the kind of place that looks like nothing in photographs. Russian archaeologists had been digging there for years, finding bones, finding teeth, finding the boring leftovers of ancient life. And then they pulled out a sliver of a finger bone, tiny, smaller than a coin. They sent it to a lab in Germany, almost as a routine check. They expected Neanderthal. They got something else. The DNA didn't match anything on file. Not modern humans. Not Neanderthals. Not any known species. It was a girl about 13 years old who had died in that cave somewhere between 40 and 70,000 years ago, and she belonged to a population science had never met. They called them Denisovans, and the moment that name was published, the entire family tree of humanity quietly fell over. Because here's what makes the Denisovans terrifying for scientists in the best possible way. We have almost no bones. A finger, a few teeth, a jaw fragment discovered later in Tibet, a piece of a skull found in China. That's it. That's the entire fossil record of a species that lived for hundreds of thousands of years across half a continent. Imagine if everything we knew about elephants came from one toenail and a molar. Now imagine that toenail tells us that elephants once ruled from Spain to Indonesia. That's the Denisovans. A whole branch of humanity reconstructed almost entirely from genetic ghosts. And what those ghosts are telling us is rewriting the timeline of who we are. Because the Denisovans didn't just exist alongside us, they lived with us. And when I say lived with us, I mean really lived with us. They had children with Neanderthals. They had children with the ancestors of modern humans. There is a famous bone fragment found in that same Siberian cave, belonging to a girl about 90,000 years old, and her DNA tells one of the most extraordinary stories ever read in a laboratory. Her mother was a Neanderthal. Her father was a Denisovan. She was a first-generation hybrid, a child of 2 different human species, walking, breathing, growing up in a world where the categories we now treat as separate were apparently just neighbors and partners and lovers. Think about that for a second. 2 species we put in different boxes in museums had a daughter together, and that daughter lived long enough to die and leave us her bones. And then comes the part that bends your sense of reality even further. The Denisovans never went extinct, not really. They're inside you, depending on where your family comes from. If you have ancestry from Tibet, from Papua New Guinea, from the Philippines, from parts of Indonesia and Australia, your genome contains genuine Denisovan DNA. Up to 5% of the genetic code of some Melanesian populations is Denisovan. 5%. That's not a contamination. That's not a rounding error. That's a substantial inheritance from a species you've probably never heard a teacher mention. And those genes are not silent. They are doing things. In Tibetans, a specific Denisovan gene helps the body survive at extreme altitude, regulating how oxygen is processed in thin mountain air. Without that gene, life on the Tibetan plateau would be brutal. With it, an entire civilization built itself at 14,000 feet. A genetic gift from a vanished species, still keeping people alive today, still working, still humming. But here's where the story gets even stranger. Because the closer geneticists looked, the more they realized the Denisovans were not one tidy group either. They were a sprawling ancient population that lived for an unimaginably long time across an unimaginably vast territory. There seem to have been at least 3 distinct Denisovan lineages, each contributing differently to different modern populations. Some mixed with the ancestors of East Asians, some mixed with the ancestors of South Asians, some mixed deep in the islands of the Pacific. They weren't a tribe, they were a world, a parallel humanity that we are only beginning to glimpse through scratches in the genome. And every new genome sequenced adds another shadow to the map. We keep finding pieces of unknown ancestors hiding inside living people, DNA that doesn't match any species we have on record. Ghost lineages. That's the term scientists use now. Ghost lineages. Populations we know existed only because their fingerprints are still smeared across our chromosomes. And the deeper this goes, the more uncomfortable an obvious question becomes. If a whole species like the Denisovans could live for 300,000 years and leave almost no bones, how many other human species were there that we have not even noticed yet? How many ghosts are still inside us, waiting to be named? Some geneticists think there were at least 2 more, maybe 3, maybe more. There are signals in African genomes of an extremely ancient population, deeper than anything we have a fossil for, that mixed with our ancestors before we ever left the continent. They have no name. They have no skull. They are pure echo. But the math is unambiguous. Something was there. Someone was there. And we kissed them and had children with them and walked away with their DNA in our pockets. And now we are sitting in the 21st century, slowly realizing the family album has way more faces than anyone admitted. This is what makes the new mapping so revolutionary. Scientists are no longer just looking at bones. They are looking at the entire human genome as if it were an archaeological site, and they are digging through it layer by layer, 300,000 years deep. Every one of us is a living museum. Every cell in your body holds the broken pieces of vanished peoples. Your immune system carries fragments donated by Neanderthals that help you fight off certain viruses. Your skin pigment, your hair texture, your metabolism, your ability to digest certain foods, your susceptibility to certain diseases. Pieces of all of it were shaped by encounters between species that the textbook said never happened. We have been a hybrid species the entire time. The pure lineage of Homo sapiens marching alone through the Ice Age is a story we made up because it sounded clean. The truth is messier and far more interesting. We are a remix. We are a collage. We are the only survivors of what was once a crowded, complicated, overlapping family of humans. And we walked out carrying souvenirs from all of them. And the Denisovans are the clearest, loudest reminder of that fact. They were not a cousin we glanced at across a valley. They were a partner, a neighbor, a people. They had culture, almost certainly. They made tools. They wore jewelry, based on the layers found in their cave. They lived through ice ages and warmings, through migrations and famines. They survived for far longer than modern humans have existed in our current form. And then, somewhere around 40 or 50,000 years ago, they vanished from the physical world. Not in a single dramatic moment, not in a war, probably in something quieter and sadder, a slow absorption, a drift, a fading. Their last pure-blooded descendants likely walked into a sapiens camp one day and never walked out as a separate people again. Their genes simply spread out into ours, and the boundary between us dissolved like ink in water. The eerie thing is that we are still finding them. Every few years, a new paper drops with a new sliver of Denisovan ancestry detected in some new population. Every new genome map pulls another ghost out of the dark. There is now serious talk among researchers that some Denisovan populations may have survived as recently as 15,000 years ago, possibly even later, in remote pockets of Southeast Asia. Which means that when the first farmers were planting wheat in the Fertile Crescent, a different kind of human might still have been walking through the jungles of New Guinea. Not the same species as us, not extinct yet, just hidden, just quiet. The line between myth and prehistory suddenly feels thinner than it used to. And maybe that's the real shock of this whole story. Not that another species existed, not that we slept with them, not even that we carry them inside us. The real shock is how much of our own past we simply did not know about until a single fingerbone from a cold cave forced us to look again. 300,000 years of human history, and we were missing one of the main characters. What else have we missed? What else is still in there, written in our genes, waiting for someone to bother decoding it? The next time someone tells you, we know who we are, remember the Denisovans, remember the ghost lineages, remember the girl whose mother was a Neanderthal and whose father was something we still barely understand. Remember that you are not the end of a single straight line. You are the meeting place of several. You are the survivor of many. If this opened a window in your head that you didn't know was there, do me one small thing. Subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments which part hit you hardest. Was it the hybrid girl? The Tibetan gene? The idea that an entire species was hiding inside your DNA? Every comment helps the channel reach more curious minds. And the more of you who show up, the deeper we can go into the story's science is just now learning how to tell. Because if the Denisovans taught us anything, it's this. The story of humanity is not finished. We are still discovering who we are. And the most extraordinary chapters might be the ones we haven't read yet.